Hey, it's Joe Mark with Personality Hacker. This is the second part of a two-part series where we're showing you a live profiling session from the main stage at our Profiler Training event in Washington, D.C. We just finished it, and Tony and I are super excited. If you watched the last video, you saw Melissa, our certification coach, profiling Tiate live on the stage, and she got through the profiling session, and there was some discussion and some confusion around Tiate's type. And so if you've watched that video, you've seen some of the discussions come up, and Tony and I were workshopping it with Melissa from the main stage, but we broke for lunch, and then we came back and we recorded a segment of audio talking with Tiate and some other students and workshopping her best fit type. So we want to roll right now into that audio and let you listen to the follow-up discussion after the lunch break of what was Tiate's best fit type.
Okay, so you read the ENFP chapter,
Yes.
the ESTP chapter, and the ENFJ chapter.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. So feel free to share your impressions of those three chapters and how you felt about them.
Okay. So when I read the ENFP chapter, to me, it really felt like that's who I am. Not just the strengths that are there and the talents, but also like when these talents are left unchecked and like the different loops, I really felt like, oh, yeah, those are like weaknesses that I have that I have been made aware of many times in my life. But the next one, the ESTP personality, there are some things that I read through and I thought, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But there are other things that didn't really resonate with me. And I think because when I read it, I felt like this is what my family, when they identify all of my weaknesses, this is what they would like me to be. Like, these are the things that they tell me, like, if you would just do this, if you would just think about this, like, you know, if you did it this way, you would be happier, it would be better, everything would be better. And so the ESTP, to me, I was like, oh, that's not who I am. That's not how I see myself. But I know that there are people who want me to be like that because they identify things that I should work on based on this chapter. The ENFJ, when I read through that one, I thought that sounded like me maybe 13, 14 years ago.
Which part of it sounded like?
When you go through the loops and it talks about the loops and how you just kind of the monkey mind and you just are like, whatever, I'll just go wherever, I'll do whatever. I don't really have any plans. I've got no skin in the game. I'm just here. That to me felt like, oh, that's what I was like. Like, I can see how that those loops resonated with me, and then I felt like maybe it was because of how, like, basically when I was reading it, so like the loops are there because you're allowing one thing to take over and there's no balance. I was like, that kind of makes sense. But I feel like because there's better balance in my life now, the ENFP to me feels like that's who I am.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah, please ask.
I was just wondering, reading that chapter and doing this whole interview, is it like, I understand me now, and it feels so good to just like have that feeling of, you know, like, not, okay, I am weird and it's good, and there's other people that are weird like me.
Yeah, I think it's just a sense of like, oh, this isn't something that's just me, and it's not this weird quirk that I have. To me, it felt like, oh, and there are ways that I can fix things that I see as maybe character flaws or deficiencies, and being like, oh, if I do this exercise, if I do this, there are ways that, you know, to kind of make sure that the relationships are not as tenuous, but also work in concert with each other.
Did you read the section on a grip, on that 3-year-old grip?
Yes.
Okay. Did you identify with that as well?
Yes, because like for the ENFP, even when I had first gotten read by Melissa, it made me laugh because of the way that you set up the car, and I felt like, no, I get in trouble for that all the time. Is that I like, I don't listen, or I do listen to the 3-year-old or the 10-year-old. I'll just be like, oh, I don't know. Can we do it? Can we not? Like, I'm never sure. For a long time, I used to have a hard time figuring out when I could cut off the fun and when I just had to be like, this is so great. Let's keep doing this, And that was, I used to get in trouble for that a lot, because I was like, why didn't you think? Why didn't you, you have to be aware of other things. And I was like, we were all just having fun. Like, I didn't know, and I knew, I just didn't want to stop the fun. But I mean, yeah, so I think, and I think it's a good way to put it, like 3-year-old and a 10-year-old, because that makes sense to me. Like, that worked for me.
All right. Anybody else have any questions?
Can you say a little bit more about the ESTP and the parts that didn't resonate with you, that you were like, oh,
Sure.
This is how I know I'm not an ESTP?
Okay, hold on, let me get to. So, the ESTP, where it talked about, the well-developed accuracy helps you express truths no matter how hurtful they can be. Like, I can't, harsh truths for me don't really, like, even when I use radical candor and I'm in class, I don't think of it as a harsh truth. I just think of it as like, this is what I'm thinking, like, I'm not saying it to make them better. I'm just saying it because that's just my off-the-cuff reaction to what they're doing, So to me, I didn't think of it as like, this is one of the things. And then I like the reflection of how you could be more honest. Am I willing to speak the truth even if it's hurtful? I was like, no. And I don't think, let's see, what else is there? Like the accuracy, where they were saying, like, if accuracy is your co-pilot and you can just cut through things and there's no, like, this is what it is, this is what it has to be. I was like, I can't, I'm not equipped to cut through things. I'd much rather just kind of like sand it down. Be like, let's try this way instead. Yeah. So, I mean, those two things were things that just really, and like logical inconsistencies, I'm okay with them sometimes. Like, I'm just like, that's just how they are. That's just a nice quirk. I don't really try to get down to the root of why are they like that and what do they do. Like,
Thank you. That's really helpful.
And then the loop for ESTP, because one of the things that could happen is if you were an ESTP, the avoidance to harsh truths, no matter what, could be a reflection of maybe being in a loop. Did any of those loops resonate with you? No, like, so the short-term loop where it's like you feel discomfort because you have contradicting thoughts and your inner voices, I was like, no, I'm good. I never really feel discomfort. Like, I never feel conflicted within my, like, oh no, this is this new thought that I have and it's against other things. I'm always just like, it's cool. New thoughts. Let's, so like those loops really weren't, one of the things that I thought was like the intimate relationship setting the tone for your life. I feel like that could be something that's there. But I don't really, I have codependent relationships because it's with my family. But I don't think I have them to the point where they cripple me to do other things, So they don't make you feel like you're losing yourself?
No.
Or your truth?
No, yeah. I always feel like when I'm in them, I feel more of myself than if I'm out of them.
And then the grip of an ESTP, the Perspectives 3-year-old grip, did any of those grips resonate with you at all?
Okay, let me get back to it. Not really. Only because, like, when I was reading this, I kind of thought about how when you're asked, like, you asked about, like, the dark parts of your life, and I was like, just kind of like, hey, guys, keep moving. And so to have that type of, I don't really withdraw. I never really show up feeling like where it says like, if the short-term grip is feel pessimistic, irritable, and joyless. And I never really feel the need to be alone and like with my thoughts and kind of, I'm always just like, it's cool. We just keep going.
Okay.
So
just keep going seems to be an answer to a lot of your like just keep moving, right?
Yeah.
And but you did identify with the loops of the ENFP, which is be busy and it will go away.
Is
Yes.
that kind of when you say just keep moving? Is that
Yes.
kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's, I mean, like I think when I talked about like when I'm depressed, what I do, I felt like, oh, that is another way of saying that I just found something else to distract myself. And I just kept, like, I went through motions of something else until that feeling passed, and then I'm good.
That grip and ENFP of feeling stuck, do you ever feel that way?
I think I felt it once that I can like remember, where I just felt like I can't do anything. I'm just super stuck. But I talked it out, you know, after feeling stuck for like a whole day and not saying anything and just trying to do other things to the point where nothing seemed to really get me through it. So like, I mean, I'm sure if I were to like look back and think about like, oh, there are other times that I was stuck, but that was the one that really stuck out to me.
Okay, cool. And can I ask you one more question?
Of course.
Okay. I noticed that you kept getting distracted by the presentation. It was almost difficult to read it because you kept getting distracted. What was distracting you?
Well, so I wanted to read, but I also didn't want Dario, because he was like the main speaker. I didn't want him to look at me and think that I wasn't paying attention to what he was saying. So I was trying to pay attention, but also still read without getting caught not paying attention to his presentation.
What would happen if you thought you weren't paying attention?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think he would really, you know, but I just didn't want him to feel like, wow, I came all the way over here. I've got this thing on my head and this girl doesn't even care, you know. And so I just wanted him to feel like everyone was being engaged in his presentation. And so I think that's why I kept trying to.
Like kind of honoring him?
A little bit.
Like
yeah.
just honoring that
Yeah,
he's...
like honoring his time and his, you know, everything that he had to say. And his name was in the chapter that I was reading at the time. And I was like, oh, hey, wait, no, he's doctor. Hold on. Wow. You know, so I think, yeah, that was my thing.
Cool. All right. Anybody have any other questions?
Is positive affirmation important to you?
Yes. Positive affirmation, according to the 5 love languages, is my love language.
Do you feel like does it matter how sincere that is, or do you judge how sincere that might be coming from somebody?
I think I do, honestly. I think I judge that sometimes.
So would that be, to clarify your question, when somebody gives her positive feedback, does she sit back and go, well, is that true or not, before she accepts it? Or is it just like, oh, that's great?
Not so much true, but like
Okay.
how genuine it is. Like, does that person really mean it?
Sincere.
Sincere.
Is the sincerity of somebody's compliment important to you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so. And I mean, like a lot of people came up to me and they were like, thanks so much. Like, you're so awesome. And I thought like, oh, thanks. You're awesome too.
Right.
But then I also thought like, oh, she doesn't really know me. Like, I mean, maybe she does. Like, she's at this thing that hacks people's personalities. I don't know, you know? And so then there was a little bit of me trying to figure out like how genuine it was the read of me and how genuine it was the read of like all of me, you know? Like is there a shelf life to how awesome I am? You know what I mean?
Right.
You know? Like,
Yeah.
so.
And like to kind of piggyback from your question though, that makes me think sometimes people will say nice things just to boost morale versus somebody saying something nice that's sincere. Are those equal in your mind? Like if you know somebody's just trying to make you feel better, you're like, you know what, thanks for trying to make me feel better, even if you know that it's not necessarily the compliment isn't sincere, the morale boost behind it is sincere.
Right.
Like does that at all color?
I think so. I think for me, when I feel that something is sincere, I'll tear up. Like I will have like a reaction where I feel like crying because I'm like, oh my gosh. When I feel like it was said as a morale booster, I'll appreciate it, but it won't like make me cry.
So you appreciate the intent,
Yes.
but it's not going to strike you.
No.
Right. Okay. And is intent important to you?
Sometimes. I think it depends on who it is, right?
I mean, do you track people's intent?
Sometimes, more than I'd like to admit, but yeah,
Okay.
I think I do.
Are you self-conscious about tracking intent?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, I just feel like maybe people shouldn't do that, right? Like you should just be like, oh, it's great that they would even think to do that, regardless of what their motive is, like what the outcome that they desire is. But I feel like I do that. I would like keep track.
So you track intent even though you think that people, like that might not be good to track intent.
Yeah.
You're doing it despite yourself.
Well, I think I don't.
I know we're getting really deep here.
No,
Asking you questions you might not have thought about before.
I think that I don't like acknowledging the fact that I track intent. I would like it to be altruistic and for it to just be like, that's so great. Look at all these people doing all these cool things. And, you know, like it doesn't matter why they did it. But I think that a part of me is still like silently keeping score.
Yeah.
You know?
What are you trying to tease out or differentiate between when you're asking those two questions?
Intent is very FI. And I find it interesting that she is reluctantly telling us she's tracking intent, even though at some point she got the message that she's not supposed to. Because like you can tell she's almost grappling with like like she's like, I think I'm not supposed to be doing that. I'm supposed to be just taking everything at face value, but I'm kind of doing it anyway. And so that's very interesting because intent is something that FI cannot help but track, but she's gotten a message that she's not supposed to do that, but she's doing it anyway. And she's reluctant to say she's doing it. Does that make sense? And so I think
it's
that's
so clingy because it's so there, even though she's almost fighting against it.
yeah.
It's just an intrinsic part of who she is.
right, or doesn't really want to admit it. Yeah. What's interesting is that co-pilot of authenticity, it is wired to track intent. It can't stop itself. It's always looking for the intent behind things, and it's always tracking motivations. And it's actually a good thing. It's a superpower. To read the intent behind people's actions is one of your superpowers. It's how you read people and their energies. So I'm not sure where you got the message you're not supposed to do that, but the message is right for them,
Right.
but it's not right for you. Keep tracking intent.
Okay.
Yeah. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Very cool.
So for somebody who's not using introverted feeling, the question about does it matter to you whether it's a genuine compliment or a contrived compliment to make you feel better? How would somebody who's not using FI, like what were you
Looking for there?
Yeah.
So FE is not tracking intent. FE is tracking the emotional results. Like that's why that's why it has such a high threshold for people saying things that kind of sound a little fakey, because the important thing is we're all keeping morale up. That's the important thing. FE is like, we're all keeping morale up.
And it's
so
everyone's job to help.
And that's right. Everybody should feed into the system. So it's almost as if you don't have something nice to say,
Don't say anything.
you
at
say
all.
nothing or you make it up.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to hear your bad mood. Okay. And so FE goes, are we all feeding into the system? Okay, that's good. So it's not as concerned with intent because it kind of doesn't want to know if it was sincere or not. It doesn't want that information because if it has that information, now it can't be monitoring the thing it wants to monitor, which is the equilibrium of like the social emotional equilibrium. Because if it keeps going deep, right, then it's like now it goes, oh, she didn't mean it. Right. And now that person isn't in a good mood.
Right.
But if we're all trying to keep the emotional equilibrium, then we don't track motivation and intent because we don't want to get ourselves in a soup.
Yeah.
Okay. But for FI, they can't help it. Even if they're supposed to be keeping everybody in a good emotional equilibrium, the thought still keeps coming up. Yeah. Like, it's like, yeah, but what did they mean? Why did they say that? What did they mean by that? And so they get themselves in the soup all the time, which is why FI runs deep and FE runs wide.
So her, like, time and place, like you said a lot, like people speak up and it's not the right thing. Why couldn't they have seen that? That was one of your obvious, but is that the learned FE?
Yeah, I think what's so fascinating, my suspicion, because your mom, whenever you did your mom's affectation, it was always an FE affectation.
Yes, it was.
One of the reasons why I asked whose voice is in your head, I thought it was very interesting. You're like, it's my voice. which is actually very FI. But I was wondering if your mom's voice comes up a lot for you. I'm wondering if she's part of your programming, because you do a lot of FE affectation. If her mom is FE, then her mom has probably instilled a lot of FE principles and like made comments like she picked up she's not supposed to look for intent somewhere. Like something said that. I don't know your family dynamic. I have no idea what your relationship is with your mom. I don't know if it's a good one or strained or what. But my suspicion is that she got a lot of FE training and her FI went, okay, this is important. This is important. This is important. Which makes her kind of a tough nut to crack, quite honestly. It makes her very difficult because her FI is absorbing these FE principles. It's FIing despite herself, right? It's like still getting in there, but she's got a lot of FE that she's integrated is important. So this time and place thing, is that something that you've heard people say? Like, did your mom say there's a time and place for things?
She didn't say that, to be clear.
Oh, she didn't.
No.
Oh, okay. I thought that was something.
My language, because that's what I say to people. I'm like,
Gotcha.
time and place, you
Okay.
gotta know your
Okay.
time
Got
and place,
it.
and I couldn't remember your
I thought
exact
you were
words.
replicating her specific words. Okay.
I
that
just
didn't
said read
hear.
the room, but yeah. Like
Read the room.
My mom says things similar to that.
Yeah. Read the room is different than time and place, right? Those are two different concepts. Joel would say read the room. When he's saying read the room, it's different than when an FE is saying read the room. FE's looking for the cultures that have been, but we'll talk about this afternoon.
Okay.
FE's looking for the cultures that are emerging. When they're reading the room, they're trying to figure out, okay, what cultural norms are part of this room now? Like, what is the like who's high status, who's low status, who's in a relationship with who's mad at who? Do I need to make sure that those two people are okay? I got to separate those two people because they're just about to fight. And if they start fighting, that person's gonna. So that's reading a room for an for an FE. An ENFP reads the energy of the room, right? They're reading sort of the energy and what are these people ready for, right? What can I get away with? Yeah. Joel's always asking, what can I get away with? Because he's got to start orchestrating the room, right? He's got to get people to do things, and how much can he get away with by trying to orchestrate all these people? Does that resonate with you? The second one or the first?
The second one.
Okay, yeah. So read the room. Is what do you got to do to get these people to do what they need to do?
I will also say she grew up in the same religious culture that I did.
Oh, okay.
And so there's so much.
I'm sorry, that is such an FE religion.
Yeah.
It's such an FE religion. And when I do profiling of different religions, it's such an FE religion.
Yes, it is.
I grew up in a TE religion. You guys grew up in an FE religion.
Yes.
That's the reason why it was so strong.
Yeah.
That makes
Both of
actually
us,
make a lot of
and,
sense.
You know, there have been a lot of times I've faked people out with FE that isn't FE. It's my TE that's like, yeah, if I come in like a bulldozer, no one's going to do what I want.
That makes a lot of sense.
So,
That makes a
and
lot
I
of
want to be
sense.
kind, but the way
Sure.
that I'm kind is like like I can kind of be FE kind in a different way. But when it comes to like really doing this stuff, I'm like, I don't really know what people need.
Gosh, that makes sense. So it's not just mom, it's
Life.
all of your
Everything.
culture, the entire culture you're raised in. And I suspect it's an ENFJ religion.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
question.
They're LDS, right? And I used to have a ton of LDS friends when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is an ENFJ religion.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Yeah. And when you say ENFJ was what I was like when I was younger, but I've grown into something more that resonates with you, the culture encourages a type, but then you become what is you as you age. That's all fascinating.
Yeah. Learning to be like bossy and selfish. That's how I'd say INTJs are. And that's how I'd say I've always wanted to be. And then be like feeling permission to do it and realizing bossy and selfish is what people need too. Bossy and selfish can lead to a wonderful result. And it's never explicitly taught, don't be like that. It's just that's sort of like something I sort of naturally picked up.
Yeah. Nobody told. Well, the religion I grew up in is very ISTJ, actually. Interestingly enough, and because I always talk about how ISTJs hate me, which is probably why my religion hemorrhaged me out of it. It was like
Vomited you up.
ouch. Yeah. But that said, I was never told anything SITE. I just knew what the culture was.
Right.
It was like, you be quiet. You don't ruffle any feathers. You keep in the system. You don't personalize anything to you, right? Everything's about the collective, and you just keep doing the same Groundhog's Week over and over. So, and you just pick it up, you just absorb it. You just know, well, that's the expectation, so that's what I gotta be. And when you get older, you start being you, and all of a sudden everybody's like, what? That's not how you're supposed to be. And it's like, I'm sorry, this is just exploding out of me. Yeah. Does that resonate too?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Does you guys feel good, or did you have any more?
I'm wondering about something, but it's
Sure.
more conceptual. Like,
Yeah.
where do like FI values come from? 'Cause I'm wondering, like, is in a situation like this, like, how much is it background and what you grew up in, and how much could it possibly be just something inherent to you that you happen to have this value for, like, serving people, like maybe like an Enneagram motivation or something like that?
Such a good question. So values are emergence of systems, for sure. And one of my favorite quotes is Robert Anton Wilson's quote, the easiest way to be brainwashed is to be born. So when it comes to values, we all start out absorbing the values around us, right? Because we don't have anything of our own yet. So we just go, right? And it's over time when we start to become, if we ever become introspective, which not everybody does, but as we become introspective, we start looking at our values and going, was that one mine? Where did I get that one? I don't think that one's mine. Maybe I should reevaluate this. Maybe I should figure out whether or not this one's mine. And then we just sort of slowly start either taking one that was given to us and making it ours and going, this one is mine, or looking at one that was given to us and going, I'm going to have to go a different way. And I don't know how it's going to impact everybody around me, but it's true for me, so I got to go. And that's a process over time. And do you mind if I ask how old you are?
No, I don't mind. I'm 35.
Okay, 35. I suspect we do a lot of that work in our 30s. We do a lot. I mean, my 30s were game changing for me when it came to values. In our 20s, we're still trying to we're so focused on making life happen, right? Our 20s are like, we just go with the tools we're given, the values, the thoughts, the beliefs we're given. But towards the end of your 30s, or 20s, early 30s, usually you have kind of established an equilibrium around the construction of your life, and now you have some space, unless you've got 20 kids or something. You're totally involved in the kid thing. But even then, I think you have enough of sort of an equilibrium where you kind of go, am I parenting the way I want to be parenting? What was this one mine? Right? And so, yeah, I think that's when game-changing sort of value adjustments happen. That's my suspicion. For everybody, not just for FIs. I do wonder if FIs have a little bit of a FI primaries, not FI auxiliaries necessary, but FI dominance. I think they get a jump on it. I think they do it a little earlier. Yeah. So whereas a lot of the rest of us are doing in our 30s, I think they move that up a little. Yeah, because I think they very early feel like in their teens and 20s, when somebody tries to reestablish a value that was given to them and it's not in there, it's just not gelling for some reason, they can't even give you the logic, that starts kicking up for them. So I think they start that process a little earlier. Not FI auxiliaries though. Yeah, FI auxiliaries get really caught up in that make my life happen thing. And so they usually wait until their 30s like others. And then FI inferiors will sometimes it takes a long time for them to get there. Yeah.
I've noticed myself going through this process where I'll observe people of other types. I'm trying to think of an example, maybe someone with FI, and I'll see how they interact differently. They feel to me they have permission to make their choices more based on what they want. Mm-hmm. I'd be like, oh, I kind of didn't know you could do that. I related to the story you shared about the environment you grew up in being so routine, you just thought that was what life was going to be, and then you realized it could be different, and so that I don't remember what words you used, but I was thinking I kind of go through that, or even TJs sometimes I'll be oh, I don't have to be so fussy about working on a project. I can just do it quickly and get it done, and it's totally fine.
Wow.
So I was thinking about that in terms of values.
Yeah. We will go through some of this. Again, we're doing embodiment exercises this afternoon, so we can talk a little bit more about this. But by the way, thank you so much for being profiled, for being willing to stick around and read those 3 chapters, for being willing to do a post-game interview, for sticking around while we're talking and chatting about letter combinations that don't mean anything to you. I really, really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
So I'm really excited you got to experience all of this. You got to watch Melissa, our certification coach in the last video, do a live profiling session from the main stage at Profiler Training. And then here you got to see Antonia and some students discussing with Tiate her actual best fit type. So you're starting to get a glimpse of what our Profiler Training events look like, what the experience might be like. But it is something you have to experience in person. It's very difficult to transmit what goes on at a Profiler Training event through video or any kind of capture medium, because it's extremely experiential. We do things like embodiment exercises around the cognitive functions where we get into the experience of what it's like to show up with each of the 8 cognitive functions. We do a lot of conversation and workshopping, a lot of exercises and experiences to help the profiling learning hit home for you, not just in the theory, but the practice. How do you sit down? How do you build rapport? How do you talk to somebody during a profiling session? All the things that go into a formal session. And all of those skills also translate into what we call conversational profiling, which is just sitting down with somebody casually, like let's say somebody on an airplane next to you, having a conversation with them, and determining their type as you talk to them, without them even really knowing you're doing a profiling session on them. So we teach you both the formal aspects of it and the informal conversational aspects of profiling in the course. If you'd like more information about this, to enroll, and how to submit an application, I recommend going over to profilertraining.com. You can read more articles, watch more videos, get more information, sign up for our interest list, and also register for the next Profiler Training class. We'd love to see you in the program.